So, of course, it had been announced not so long ago that Peacemaker, the coach and in-game leader at times for Tempo Storm, had parted ways with the team. And while there was a little bit of uncertainty about what would happen next, it was announced about an hour before I started recording this video that Peacemaker was going to be the coach of Team Liquid going forward. And so what I wanted to do with this video is just talk a little bit about Peacemaker's time with Tempo Storm, as well as what he might be able to do for Liquid going forward. It is also important to note that I did a quite lengthy interview with Peacemaker not so long ago that you can check out, where I think that you'll be able to get some insight into Peacemaker from his own mouth. And I did actually timestamp the topics that we discussed in that video, and so I will link that in the description below if you do want to get a little bit more information from Peacemaker himself. But how I'll start out this video is just talking a little bit about how we came to know Peacemaker, because obviously he came from the Brazilian scene, which was a bit obscure. It's not something that we know so much about, with the exception of the teams that have actually moved over to North America and have now had a lot of success. Which it started out as Kaboom at the very beginning of 2015 at MLGX Games Aspen, and then how that team evolved into what we know as Luminosity today, and now what they've been able to accomplish with winning MLG Columbus. They also just recently won the ESL Season 3 Pro League, so it's another title for them. And of course they dominated the North American scene in online play, as well as beating all the top North American teams at DreamHack Austin recently as well. So we've come to know that team, of course, and of course we were beginning to get to know Tempo Storm after having some nice map wins over at IEM Katowice not that long ago. Then of course winning the CEVO title, coming second place at DreamHack Austin, and of course being another team that was having a lot of success against the top North American teams in online tournaments and league play. But Peacemaker was someone we didn't really know anything about when he came on to Tempo Storm. At the time, they were actually still Games Academy, and this was at the very end of November of 2015, going into December. And of course, they were not picked up by Tempo Storm until February, which was just a few months ago. And when he joined the team, didn't know a whole lot about him. I did, like I said, talk a little bit to Peacemaker in the interview that I did about, how did these guys even know to pick him up? Because obviously we didn't know who he was, but of course the Brazilian guys did. And what I kind of learned was that Zeus, who is now the coach for Luminosity and was formerly the coach of Games Academy, was good friends with Peacemaker and was aware of the fact that Peacemaker did put a lot of time into studying the game and had a lot of knowledge. And with his departure from Games Academy to Luminosity, he was one of the people who felt that Peacemaker could be a good replacement. He had kind of proven that he was quite knowledgeable about the game and that he could be beneficial to that team going forward. And of course, this is the same time that, Baltz was let go from Luminosity, and there was a time where Baltz thought that he might actually just not play because, he just got kicked off the best Brazilian team there was, so he had to go down a notch, but was kind of convinced to try things out on Tempo Storm. Then, of course, Phelps, who was this guy that many in the Brazilian scene hyped up as being this next great talent, but that maybe had a little bit of attitude problems in the past. He was given his chance on Tempo Storm as well, and certainly he has really evolved as a player as well, which we may talk about a little bit in this video. And so when Peacemaker joins his team, he is actually the full-on leader of the team. He is, for all intents and purposes, the IGL of the team, though he is doing it from outside of the game, of course, from the coach position. And it is true that Tempo Storm looked quite strategically sound in pretty much all the games that I ever watched. They kind of featured that slower, more methodical style as a foundation to their play, which is very similar to a Na'Vi, which when talking to Peacemaker, he did say that he did draw some inspiration from that team. And it's also very similar to Luminosity, who again also kind of has that slower, more methodical style as kind of a Na'Vi did. But I think they also kind of implemented some innovative executes and added some aggression to their game, kind of mixed in these faster-paced plays at a sooner date than Na'Vi did. Of course, Na'Vi began to start throwing that stuff in MLG Columbus, and that is kind of the evolution of the game now. A lot of these slower, more methodical teams still have that as their base play, but now they've begun to mix in these quicker executes to kind of catch their opponents off guard and just change the pace of the game at certain times, just trying to keep things fresh, keep things new, make them not as readable as maybe they had been in the past. And so Tempo Storm was of this same school of thought, basically, in most of the games I watched. I mean, you had players like Bolts and Showtime who would particularly play these peripheral roles on pretty much every map, whether that be Cache, which lately it had been kind of Bolts playing outside B, Showtime playing in the door, though in the past Bolts had played door and Showtime had played B, so they had done some swapping around there. When you look at Mirage, you know, one of those guys playing outside A, one kind of playing the upper B apartments to underpass, and the other three working mid-control. And same with Dust 2 with peripheral role players and the B tunnels and outside long A and the 3 working control of Cat and middle. You get the point. You know, this default, you know, style of kind of spreading the map out and trying to work control of a specific area, you know, usually middle on maps like Cache and Mirage, for instance, and then just kind of reacting to what they are being given or what they are noticing. But Tempo Storm also did, similarly to Luminosity, implement some pretty cool tactics as well at times. Of course, we all know that Luminosity had this really cool tactic on Cobblestone where they would kind of smoke off the truck, which would kind of wall off CTs playing inside the site or playing long A from being able to spot them coming up the mid-slope, and they would use that to actually get inside the connector between the two sites and actually split the B-bomb site that way, which is this crazy tactic that I had never really seen anyone use. I had seen Virtus Pro use that same smoke wall to actually, you know, take a different approach to sealing off rotates from B to attack the A site on Cobblestone, but now Luminosity was using the same wall to actually attack the B-bomb site, and I saw Tempo Storm throw that into the mix. As of course, there had to be plenty of communication between Peacemaker and Zeus, and even from speaking with Peacemaker, he admitted this, that, you know, he and Zeus would talk about things and try to come up with tactics together even sometimes. And so there was kind of this collective of ideas that was taking place over there, right? But I did see Tempo Storm also come up with some pretty cool stuff that I wasn't seeing Luminosity do. So I know at the CEVO Season 9 finals, we partnered with Gfinity that I was commentating at a few weeks ago, we saw them doing like this double run boost off the catwalk of Dust 2 and using that to attack the A bomb site, or using it to get into CT spawn very quickly and actually split the B bomb site through CT spawn. So these were kind of some new tricks that they were throwing out there. Not to say that people weren't at times using CT spawn to split sites on Dust 2. I mean, Vox Imanor way back in the day used to do that. Virtus Pro, a team that doesn't play D2 a whole lot, used to use that. But yeah, they were still throwing in kind of these new twists and turns to how that stuff was being used. And they were also, you know, cherry picking things from other teams, like, for instance, using the smoke wall on long A of Dust 2 to isolate Pit. You know, they were throwing that into their game. Then I'm watching them on Cache, and I was seeing them come up with these crazy smoke and Molotov executes on the B-bomb site that just implemented way more utility than most B executes I had seen on the map, though I don't think we really saw them use that so much in big tournament play on LAN. It was mostly stuff I had just seen them do in online matches, though maybe they could have brought it out at some point. They also had some different ways of actually attacking the A-bomb site as well, different ways of slipping Phelps into the red box in the center of the site and kind of just sitting him there, and he'll just be kind of patient and kind of just wait for players to rotate through connector or balcony to just get free kills before they actually roll out the rest of the forces onto the site. And I don't want to spend too much time talking about every single map in their pool, but the point is that under Peacemaker's leadership, he had established this similar style to like a Luminosity or a Navi of this slower, more methodical default foundation, and then he would mix in kind of these cooler executes and at times innovative plays and ways of approaching the game that you didn't really see so much anywhere else. So he certainly had proven himself to be quite a good coach as well as a good tactician while watching Tempo Storm play, and it was evident by watching the results this team was putting up. I mean, in the North American scene, this team was, you know, dominating a lot of the North American teams when you were looking at things like the DreamHack Malmö qualifiers or the IM Katowice qualifiers, and just different, you know, online play. You would see Tempo Storm get the better of some of the top North American teams, and they were starting to establish themselves as, you know, perhaps, you know, one of the top 5 teams in the scene. Some people even put them right below Luminosity, maybe at number 2, competing in North America. Granted, CLG did kind of eventually catch up to them in online play. We did see CLG actually beat them in the iBuyPower tournament, the Spring Invitational that we recently had online, as well as I think they actually did beat them in one of the SIVO qualifier brackets. So there was a little bit of catching up taking place from some of the North American teams, but for the most part, Tempo Storm looked very strong. Of course, they then went on to win the SIVO Season 9 finals, and they were beating, good competition to do that. Beating, Virtus Pro and then beating SK in the finals. And they also, I think they might have even beat Dignitas early in the tournament, if I'm not mistaken. So, they were putting up, results against good teams. And then, of course, prior to that, they did, in fact, have some good map victories. At IM Katowice, they were taking maps off of Virtus Pro and Envy. They took a map off of Navi in the playoffs of that event. And then when you look at DreamHack Austin, which was the last LAN event they had played together where Peacemaker was still a part of the team, they did, they beat Liquid, they beat Energy in the best of ones in group play, they beat C9 in a best of three, though a pretty, hotly contested best of three. And then, the only person who stood in their way of winning the championship at Austin was Luminosity, who has been kind of regarded as the best team in the world. And, of course, a team that is going to be quite familiar with Tempo Storm as they live, right across the street from each other. And, of course, again, there's a lot of sharing of ideas, I'm sure, between the two teams. So, certainly, he had done a great job, and the team looked good. Now, I do know that going into the SIVO Season 9 finals, Bolts had become the in-game leader of the team, and so it seemed as though Peacemaker was kind of slowly backing off of being the captain of the team, so to speak, the main shot caller for the team. But he still was very involved. It's important to note this, that even at the SIVO Season 9 finals, when Bolts had announced that he was now the in-game leader of the team, and people were saying, wow, Bolts is playing really well, even though he's still in-game leading. And Bolts was playing really well, and he was in-game leading. There's no doubt about that. But I think that people can't just assume that because Bolts was in-game leading that Peacemaker was not contributing. It's certainly true that, from what I understand, at times, maybe Bolts ran out of ideas, or maybe at certain times when the pressure was really on, Bolts was at times struggling to come up with the right call. And so that's when Peacemaker could kind of come in and interject and be like, hey, I see you're struggling a little bit. Maybe you should try this. Maybe we should do this, So still giving Bolts the final say, but coming in and kind of picking up where maybe he noticed that Bolts was kind of slipping a little bit. Not to mention, there probably were still some instances where Peacemaker was calling plays for particular rounds, and maybe Bolts was calling for other rounds. And so there was this dichotomy there, right? It wasn't just Bolts. It's not as if Peacemaker completely, faded into the background. He was still very involved with the team's preparation, as well as coming in when needed to make mid-round calls or pre-round calls to make sure the team was still running properly. So, yes, it is certainly true that Bolts began to take some responsibilities of leading the team, but Peacemaker was certainly still there as a support system. Now, apparently, even though this team had been so successful and they were really rising up, not only within the North American scene in their play there, but also just internationally now. I think they were starting to get ranked in the world's top 10 for some people, including Thorn, who is quite an expert on the game, and they even put them, I think, at number 7 or something like that. And I, too, felt that they had been proving themselves as a top team in the world. So you would think that everything is great. Why would you need to change anything? There seems to be a lot of great things going for this team. They seem to be, just slowly building themselves up more and more as each event passes. Why do you break a thing that is not broken, so to speak? But talking with Peacemaker and from hearing things from, I believe, Henny, who had said some stuff on his stream and some different things like that, apparently it was decided right after DreamHack Austin that Peacemaker would part ways with the team, but apparently there had been discussions about Peacemaker leaving the team even prior to the SIVO Season 9 finals. Apparently there were differences in opinion on the direction of the team. From what I understand, the team, including Bolts, wanted Bolts to be the in-game leader, and so wanted Peacemaker to take kind of a back seat, kind of more of a passive approach, still coach the team, but that Bolts would be the main captain, the main in-game leader. And apparently Peacemaker felt that that wasn't right, that he should continue to captain the team and be the in-game leader of the team, which, who could blame him? He had been doing that for quite some time for this team, and they were successful, so why, again, break something that's not broken? I'm sure that's not actually the idiom. I'm sure that there's a different way of saying that, but that's the best I come up with off the top of my head right now. So, yeah, apparently there were some disagreements about the direction of the team. I did ask if there was any maybe personal conflicts that may have caused the team to break apart, because I feel like there has to be something kind of behind the scenes we don't know about, because it does seem rather odd how this all took place. But from what he told me, there were no real big personal conflicts, just normal things that happen with every CSGO team in the world. Now, how he defines normal things that happen with every CSGO team in the world, I'm not sure. I mean, again, every team, I'm sure, has arguments between players at different times, but you just work through it, you sort it out, and you move forward, basically. So I don't know if they were having these like conflicts at times as well, and they just built up over time and eventually it reached a breaking point. I have no idea. All I can go is what I've been told, and apparently there wasn't any like major fights or altercations that caused them to fall apart, but rather the departure came because I guess Peacemaker and the team couldn't come to an agreement about things related to the game as far as the direction of the team going forward. So I guess I just have to leave it at that then, just accept what he has given me. Now, there is a big question looming over this move, I think, as before we get into Team Liquid, is how does Tempo Storm work now without Peacemaker? Because yes, Bolts is leading the team, and yes, Bolts could simply just continue to run the system that has already been in place for the team, using the same tactics and setups that the team had already been using for the past few months. He could still just keep running those same things, and they should still be relatively okay. But what about when those things aren't working? Is Bolts going to be able to make the adjustments? As the metagame of CSGO develops going forward, is he going to be able to keep up with the times and make the necessary moves to keep the team sharp? That's a difficult question to answer, because I think that even if you wanted Bolts to be the in-game leader, it's invaluable what a coach can actually bring to the table as like a second mind, someone who can, see things from a different perspective and perhaps help you see things that you aren't seeing. Or what if Bolts does feel the pressure? What if he does come at a loss of what to do next? Now he isn't going to have that coach behind him to step in and interject and be able to kind of pick him back up. Granted, there are some other players in the team who are quite vocal. From what I understand, Henny used to lead the team a little bit before, Peacemaker came on board as a coach, and apparently he was very vocal in helping out with ideas. I'm sure some of the other players were as well. So he will have the other players on the team to assist him. But it is certainly true that without their coach, they could maybe suffer a little bit going forward strategically. So that is certainly something to think about. I mean, they obviously just won the ESA Premier LAN to get an ESL Pro League spot without Peacemaker there. But, once we see them against top international competition again, you do somewhat have to wonder if they are going to suffer a bit by not having Peacemaker on board. So my point is that this whole, whatever took place that caused the team and Peacemaker to not see eye to eye, Tempo Storm may regret not being able to have smoothed that over to keep Peacemaker on board. I'm not going to sit here and say that now all is lost because Peacemaker has left and that Tempo Storm will slowly decline now. Maybe Bolts will again be able to handle things just fine and they will still be in good shape. But I think that if you do see Tempo Storm start to fall off a little bit, you do have to kind of consider that maybe losing the coach could have been a huge contributing factor to that. And I'll just leave that at that for now. So, now let's get into the idea of Peacemaker joining Team Liquid as a coach and what he can do for them. Now, I would have said that Peacemaker could have been a commodity for any North American team prior to Liquid picking him up. I mean, even Cloud9, who has Urakanji I don't think can commit full-time to coaching since he is in dental school, I believe is the case. So maybe they would have even considered having him on board. As well to maybe even have like another player come in, like another fragger, and just have to, him be the in-game leader for the team from outside the game like he was doing for Tempo Storm. So I think he could have been a viable candidate for Cloud9. I mean, CLG has PETA, and strategy doesn't seem to be their problem, so I don't think maybe he would have fit in at CLG. But yeah, certainly Cloud9 could have used him. Liquid obviously could have used him, and I'm sure there's a bunch of other teams that you could bring into the mix that would have been happy to have the help of Peacemaker. But it was Liquid who decided to acquire him, and that is where he decided to go. And so now we have to start considering what can Peacemaker bring to Team Liquid? It's true that Liquid weren't crazy different from Tempo Storm and how they approach the game. It's not as if you're going from Tempo Storm to Tyloo or something like that. You know, Tyloo, a team that just does these crazy executes with all 5 players within the first 20 or 30 seconds of the round with just a couple of pop flashes, and they just swarm a site. Something that I've seen them do on pretty much every map that I've watched them play, like Mirage on the A-bomb side or Cash on both sites or middle. You know, they're just crazy fast, crazy aggressive, just these insane coordinated executes that take place very early in the round. It's not as if Peacemaker went from the system that Tempo Storm had to that. It's not crazy different, but I would say that Liquid were a bit more on the aggressive side. I mean, you have... it's not. I mean, I think, you know, Phelps is a pretty aggressive player, and he kind of had Lucas many times as a little bit of an entry duo. Though also, I would say, depending on what site you would hit, maybe Boltz is also a bit involved in the execute, like Hiko would be, maybe. Like if I'm thinking about, you know, Cash, for example. So again, it's not as if it's a crazy different system of players, crazy different roles. I think that they were actually quite similar when you watched them play default, when you watched how Liquid wanted to get mid control on Mirage or how they wanted to get mid control on Cash. It wasn't so much different from how Tempo Storm did things on those particular maps. Though I would say, again, that Liquid typically was going to be a bit more aggressive. They probably were more prone to throw in these aggressive executes in their play and not rely on their default as much, as Tempo Storm would almost open up default regularly and would throw in aggressive executes, yes, but maybe not as often as Liquid would, right? So it's not crazy different systems. So it won't be as if like it's a night and day scenario. I think Peacemaker will find certain players and certain setups that Liquid have to be somewhat, how can I put this, familiar to him and what he's used to seeing. So some things to consider is that I think for now Peacemaker will just be a coach and Adren will still be the in-game leader. But I think you will slowly see Peacemaker take more and more responsibilities as he figures out the team more, as he gets more time to implement his system and practice with them. I think they're actually practicing right now. I saw them practicing right after the announcement was over, just earlier this afternoon. So they're already, you know, putting the work in. And so I think that it will take some time for Peacemaker to figure everything out. But I think eventually the plan is for him to become the full leader of the team. And that could be great for a player like Adren, who, when he wasn't having to lead the team, when he didn't have that pressure put on him, when he was playing at the Columbus qualifiers or the Columbus Major itself, he put up better numbers than what he had been doing while he was the in-game leader. So maybe this does free up Adren to produce a little bit better as Peacemaker slowly takes more responsibility over the team and Adren falls back more into just being kind of a support player. That could be a thing, which would be great for Liquid to get more production out of Adren in the fragging department. I think you will also just see Liquid just become more refined in how they approach the game. Again, it's not as if they had no tactics. It's not as if they had no default. It's not as if they were completely mindless. I mean, there was a system in place. They usually would do pretty well in games. It's just the struggle to close them was their big problem. And maybe that is something that Peacemaker can address. Maybe he can deal with the players and kind of figure out why it is that their mentality is not in the right place to close out games. And maybe he can aid in that as well. So maybe that is, you know, another positive impact that Peacemaker can have on the team. I do know from talking with Peacemaker that he does have some ideas about how he wants to kind of implement a style onto this team that won't necessarily just be a copy paste of Tempo Storm, because from what I understand, he was trying to change up the play of Tempo Storm a bit going forward. Maybe he was trying to get them a bit more dynamic in how they approach the game, but he just didn't have the time to do it apparently. So maybe that's something that you will see on Liquid, is their identity won't be just a copy of Tempo Storm, but maybe it just will be the true identity of Peacemaker finally expressing itself. So we'll just have to kind of sit back and see what that actually means, what that actually looks like going forward. So it'll certainly be interesting to see the adjustments that Liquid makes as Peacemaker, again, gets more time with the team. Of course, he will be with them at E-League. He will be with them in all their online plays, already with them now. So again, I don't know how much different the team will look by the time they play in E-League in a couple of weeks, because that's a really short amount of time for Peacemaker to have to work things out. But I think you will just see this team become even more strategically sound than they already were. I think hopefully he can help with the mentality of the team. And hopefully this can free up Adren a bit more to be more productive. So I think that Peacemaker can only bring positive things to the table for Liquid. They can only improve with his help. Whether it'll be enough to make them a true contender in the national scene will be a question that is left to be unanswered. But I think that we could be hopeful that Liquid will improve with his help. And so this was a great move for Liquid, but it might be a move that Tempo Storm regrets. We'll just have to see how it all plays out. But I don't want to go too much further into it. Maybe I'll do a video later on down the line once Peacemaker's been with the team for a while, and maybe I can kind of address how the team has changed under his direction. That maybe that could be an idea for something to do maybe a couple of months down the road once, you know, we've seen him with the team for quite a lot of time. Right now, all I can do is speculate what he might be able to do with the team. And I think that it can only be good things. So yeah, thanks a lot for tuning in. If you enjoyed, please follow and subscribe for more content. Thanks so much, and see you next time.